Events in Ferguson, Missouri this year have definitely put this city in the center of public awareness. But these events, which followed in the aftermath of the shooting death of a man by a police officer, have also led to protests in other cities, including Dallas, Boston, LA, and New York. Modern-day so-called civil rights leaders like Sharpton and Jesse Jackson have relentlessly and shamelessly used the troubling events in Ferguson to make screeching accusations of civil rights violations. And it surprised no one that Barak Obama used the incident to state that there is a deep distrust that exists between police and minorities, and that communities of color aren't just making these problems up. But when I consider these modern-day charlatans of civil rights, I can't help but remember a young preacher from Montgomery, Alabama, who I believe, were he here today, would not be standing with these civil rights imposters. This young preacher I refer to is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who just over 51 years ago addressed a crowd of 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C. He called on the people of the various states and the government of these United States to live up to the principles espoused in the Declaration of Independence. But it was not, as many have falsely claimed, a call for civil rights. In fact, in my view, Dr. King was not a champion of civil rights. He was a champion of God-given rights. Dr. King made clear in his famous address that the liberty and equality before the law he was demanding did not originate in human government. The right to equality before the law is not a civil right. It is a right ordained by God, and therefore a right that civil government has a duty to protect and defend. Dr. King quoted from the Old Testament books of Amos, Isaiah. He also made subtle references to Psalm 30 and the New Testament book of Galatians, when he said that he hoped his children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He was applying God's fixed, eternal standard, not a malleable, man-made one. Unlike many modern-day welfare state proponents, Dr. King's demands were right because they were based on a righteous pretense. It appears to me that this concept of civil rights was a gross distortion of his work. This bastardized version of the truth would actually only serve to compound power into the already corrupted taskmaster, the human heart, or more specifically, the human-occupied civil institutions. At one time in our history, we looked to God's Word to determine what was right and wrong. This was a fixed and certain standard. Having jettisoned this fixed objective standard, government tramples our God-given rights and now pretends to issue what it calls civil rights. But civil rights are make-believe. Real rights come from the Creator. In Ferguson, Missouri, we have witnessed the folly and futility of make-believe civil governments. In both private and public policy, we must remember that God created only one race. That's the human race. Therefore, all elevation or denigration of individuals or groups based on skin color is immoral and shameful because it violates the law of nature, and nature's God. This New Year's, let's resolve to love one another and keep from being torn apart by one-sided, un-American thinking.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
This is Jake MacAulay with the Institute on the Constitution, bringing you the American view in this new year.